Sophia Loren, the eternal beauty of Italy and one of the most celebrated actresses in cinematic history, has captivated audiences around the globe for more than 7 decades with her elegance, innate talent, and unforgettable presence. Her journey from a frail, overlooked child, once deemed ugly, raised in the shadows of poverty and war, to the heights of Hollywood stardom is a bittersweet epic of pain and perseverance. Yet beyond the dazzling lights and silver screen acclaim lies a truth few truly understand. What really happened to the woman who once defined an entire era with her grace and emotional depth? Let's walk through a life filled with triumph, tragedy, and timeless grace. Before we begin, we'd love to hear from you. On a scale of 0 to 10, how would you rate Sophia Loren? Your opinion really matters. Sophia Loren entered this world to the sound of her mother's silent sobs and the metallic clank of hospital doors closing behind them. What followed wasn't childhood, it was survival in its cruelest form. Born in 1934 in a Roman maternity clinic for unwed mothers, she was the product of a love that never found its name. A man who refused even the barest acknowledgement, his surname. Her mother, Romilda Villani, once a beauty queen with dreams of Hollywood stardom and a striking resemblance to Greta Garbo, had caught the eye of Riccardo Ciccolone, a man who seduced easily but committed to nothing. When she became pregnant, he vanished into the shadows, leaving her to raise Sophia in disgrace and silence. But even after abandoning her once, Riccardo returned only to vanish again, leaving behind another child, Maria, born in 1938. He refused to sign Maria's birth certificate, denying her the right to his name. Sophia, then already a rising star, had to pay him years later just so Maria could legally carry it. It wasn't justice. It was a wound reopened for a price. Sophia's earliest years were marked by shame, hunger, and an aching absence of safety. She grew up in Pozzuoli near Naples, in a crumbling home shared with a sprawling, impoverished family. There were nights when 10 people crammed into a single room, breathing each other's fears. Her mother played piano at local bars for a few lire. Her grandmother opened a tiny cherry liquor shop from their living room. And Sophia, still a child, washed dishes and served soldiers with a smile she hadn't learned to mean. The pain was constant, but it was quiet, an ambient suffering that soaked into the walls and crept under her skin. Food was a dream, not a guarantee. There were weeks when all Romilda could offer her daughters was a single potato or a handful of rice begged from neighbors. One day, in an act that still shatters the soul, Romilda scooped water from a car radiator to keep Sophia and Maria from dying of thirst. That wasn't desperation. It was a mother's slow agony in a world that had shut its doors on them. And then came the war. During the brutal bombings of World War II, the sky above Naples split open. Sirens wailed. Children screamed. Sophia remembers mistaking a piece of chocolate dropped by an American soldier for some unknown treasure, because she had never tasted anything that sweet. The moment was brief. Reality returned with blood. One explosion sent shrapnel flying through the streets, and a fragment tore into her face, leaving a scar on her chin that no child should carry. She would learn to cover it with makeup, but never to forget it. The wound was small. The shame, enormous. She was mocked for her thin frame. Her classmates called her toothpick, little stick, and worse, the ugly girl. Even her own wet nurse once whispered that she was the ugliest baby she had ever seen. There are many wounds fame can cover, but childhood cruelty is not one of them. Despite it all, something in Sophia refused to break. At 14, her body changed. Curves bloomed. Eyes sharpened. The ugly duckling no longer looked like a girl beaten by war. She looked like a force rising from the ashes. When she walked down the street, men stared. Agencies noticed. Beauty had finally caught up with the soul that had survived so much pain. But it would take years before the world saw the whole of her story. Behind the glamour, behind the grace, was always that little girl, hungry, forgotten, and scarred. For a girl who had only known hunger, shame, and silence, the promise of beauty was never just about vanity. It was survival's last card. And when opportunity finally knocked, it came with the face of another man she would learn to love and suffer for, Carlo Ponti. Sophia Loren's transformation at 14 wasn't some glamorous movie montage. It was a quiet rebellion. The gaunt, mocked child known as Toothpick had bloomed into a curvaceous young woman. And suddenly the same world that once looked away began to stare. Yet the cruelty never left. Whispers of her illegitimacy clung like a shadow. She entered beauty pageants not out of vanity but desperation, wearing a dress sewn from pink curtains because it was all her grandmother could afford. When she stepped onto that stage, she didn't just want a crown. She wanted a way out. It was there she caught the eye of Carlo Ponti, a prominent film producer nearly twice her age, married, and with children. He was enchanted. She was 16. Their meeting would set the stage for one of the most complicated, scandalous, and ultimately enduring love stories in cinematic history, a half-a-lifetime tragedy she would carry in her heart. To Ponti, she was a revelation, a soul both raw and radiant. To Loren, he was the first man who looked past the shame and saw potential. He helped reshape her identity, beginning with her name, Sophia Loren, inspired by Swedish actress Marta Torén. Her early roles were uncredited, barely more than background faces. But each frame was a step away from Potswali, from hunger, from the trauma etched in her mother's eyes. Still, success didn't erase suffering. It repackaged it. Behind every camera flash was the weight of scrutiny. Every line she delivered on screen was measured against the headlines questioning her relationship with a married man. Sophia didn't just battle for roles. She battled for dignity. The Italian public, rooted in strict Catholic values, viewed her bond with Ponti as scandalous. There were whispers, judgments, moral condemnations. But she stayed. She loved. And she endured. Record sales were disappointing, and the band quietly dissolved by 1982. Both the musical collaboration and her personal relationship had come to an end. Yet, even in these moments of setback, Cher never lost her resolve. She kept moving forward, willing to try new directions, always searching for the sound and space where she could once again feel at home. This chapter in her life was filled with trial and error, highs and lows, but it also revealed the very essence of who Cher was, and is, a woman who refuses to stand still, a performer who reinvents, rebuilds, and rises again, even when the world is not watching. After facing challenges in music and personal heartbreaks, Cher made a courageous decision. She turned her focus to something entirely new, acting. It was not just a career shift, it was a leap of faith. In 1983, she took on a supporting role in the film Silkwood, acting alongside industry legends Meryl Streep and Kurt Russell. The story, based on real-life events surrounding Karen Silkwood, was powerful and intense, and in it, Cher delivered a performance that stunned audiences and critics alike. Her role earned her a Golden Globe Award and an Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actress. For many, it was the first time they saw Cher not just as a singer or entertainer, but as a serious actress with depth, range, and heart. This marked a turning point. Over the next few years, she continued to build her reputation in Hollywood, taking on roles in critically acclaimed films like Mask and Suspect, further proving her ability to command the screen in both drama and complex character work. But the moment that truly cemented her place in cinematic history came in 1987 when she starred in Moonstruck, a romantic comedy that would change everything. Playing Loretta Castorini, a widowed Italian-American woman torn between reason and passion, Cher gave a performance that was both charming and deeply moving. The film's warmth, humor, and emotional honesty captured hearts around the world, and Cher, with her unmatched presence and authenticity, won the Academy Award for Best Actress. It was more than a trophy, it was a powerful statement. A woman who had been doubted, dismissed, and defined by her past had just become one of the most celebrated actresses of her time. This chapter in Cher's life was not just about success, it was about transformation. All the struggle, reinvention, and perseverance had finally paid off. The girl who once felt like she didn't belong in school, the young woman who wore rubber bands on her shoes, the entertainer who had been told she would not survive without her partner, now stood at the top of Hollywood on her own. Just as she had reached the pinnacle of her acting career with awards, acclaim, and powerful roles confirming her versatility, life took another unexpected turn. While filming The Witches of Eastwick in 1987, Cher began to feel unwell. What began as minor symptoms turned into a more serious condition that would affect her deeply. She was soon diagnosed with a virus that weakened her body and spirit. As the illness progressed, she developed pneumonia and was forced to step away from her work entirely. For 2 years, she could not act or sing. She had to say no to roles she had long dreamed of because her body simply would not allow her to go on. In a New York Times interview, she later shared how painful that period was, not just physically but emotionally. "I was really upset about it," she admitted, and who could blame her? To work so hard, to rise so far, and then be stopped by something completely out of your control. It was a quiet kind of heartbreak, the kind that builds in silence, away from cameras and applause. When Cher finally returned, she had to rebuild once again, from the beginning. This chapter was not marked by public drama or headlines. It was marked by quiet suffering, by strength that no one saw, and by a woman learning, once again, how to rise after being forced to pause. As Cher continued building her solo career in music and film, Sonny Bono began a transformation of his own, one that surprised many who had followed their journey. By the late 1980s, Sonny had stepped away from the spotlight of entertainment and entered politics. In 1988, he was elected mayor of Palm Springs, California. It was a striking new chapter for the man who once stood beside Cher on stages and television screens across the world. But Sonny was determined to make a difference. In 1994, he was elected to the United States Congress, representing California's 44th district. Though their romantic relationship had ended long before, Cher never stopped recognizing Sonny's role in her life. Their partnership had shaped a generation, and shaped her. Then came a moment no one was prepared for. While on vacation in Aspen, Colorado, Sonny was involved in a tragic skiing accident. News of the incident spread quickly, and the world was stunned. But no one felt the impact more deeply than Cher. As soon as she heard, she flew from London to Los Angeles to be with family. At Sonny's memorial service, she stood not as a pop icon but as someone mourning a man who had once meant everything to her. Her eulogy was powerful, filled with emotion. Through tears, she honored Sonny's vision, intelligence, and the way he helped transform a quiet 16-year-old girl and himself into one of the most beloved entertainment duos of their time. She didn't speak of tension or pain but of respect and gratitude. Behind the comedy, behind the music, behind the show, she reminded the world, was a man with dreams and the courage to follow them, even in the most unexpected directions. It was a moment of closure, reflection, and deep humanity. Behind Cher's global fame and dazzling success lay a role perhaps most difficult of all, being a mother. Her career demanded long hours, constant travel, and relentless spotlight. Though she loved her children deeply, the pressures of fame sometimes created a distance hard to bridge. Her youngest son, Elijah Blue Allman, opened up in a 2014 interview about growing up with a world-famous mother. At just 7, he was sent to boarding school, a decision that, for a child, felt like abandonment. When you go to boarding school at 7 years old, it's kind of hard to feel like you're not being shunned, Elijah said, expressing the quiet pain he carried. Though now an adult, he admitted he was still processing the emotions. I'm at an age where I'm making peace with it, but it still doesn't mean it's right. In 2013, Elijah and his wife moved in with Cher, hoping to reconnect. But life complicated things. A dispute, never publicly explained, fractured the connection once again. Still, Elijah spoke without bitterness. Their relationship, he said, was a work in progress, unresolved, but not broken. And through it all, one thing remained clear. He loved and admired his mother deeply. She's really talented, she's gorgeous. I mean, she's Cher. What's not to love? Their story is not one of perfect reconciliation, but of human complexity, a mother and son finding their way through the shadows of time, fame, and pain. Cher's path as a mother was unconventional. Her first child with Sonny, born Chastity's son Bono, would one day begin a deeply personal transformation, one that would test their bond and capacity to grow together. In the late 2000s, Chastity began transitioning to male, becoming Chaz Bono. For Chaz, it was a journey of truth. For Cher, a journey through confusion and emotion. Though long a symbol of LGBTQ+ support, Cher admitted Chaz's transition wasn't easy for her. She wrestled with fears and uncertainty. Who would Chaz become? Would she lose a part of her child? But over time, something stronger than confusion took over. Love. She listened. She learned. She chose love over fear. Chaz is so happy now, she shared. And we get along better than ever. Their relationship had become stronger, deeper, and more real. Chaz's journey wasn't just about identity. It was about the power of being seen, accepted, and loved. For Cher, it was a reminder. Motherhood isn't just about raising a child, it's about growing alongside them. Now approaching 80, Cher has achieved a milestone few reach, with such resilience, legacy, and strength. Behind the glitter, behind the awards and unforgettable songs, is a woman who has endured more than most will ever know. Loneliness, heartbreak, illness, and silence often hid beneath her brightest moments. Yet she never stopped. She reinvented herself time and again, not for performance, but for survival. Each reinvention was a declaration, I am still here. She has lived many lives in one lifetime. The daughter, the mother, the icon, the outsider, the voice for those who had none. Through every chapter, joyful or painful, she stood tall, with defiance, with elegance, and that unmistakable fire in her spirit. Her life may not be perfect or easy, but it is real. And maybe that's what makes her stories so unforgettable. If this journey has touched your heart, if Cher has ever given you strength through her music, her story, or simply her presence, share your thoughts. What moment in her life moved you most? What does Cher mean to you? Let us know, and together, let's celebrate the strength behind the spotlight.